my pleasure and great responsibility to address you this event. And this round table is just one probably small piece which is absolutely no doubt useful for this contribution for this huge intellectual exercise which has been going on for months already. People, politicians, practitioners, experts trying to understand what is going on. But let me elaborate what has been said already by Ambassador, that we are about to make only small steps, let's say baby steps towards the understanding of the situation. And needless to say how important it is to understand and to have as broad picture as possible, not just in order to present this picture, but in order to make our actions, let's say, more proactive. Because so far, international community in Ukraine has been rather reactive, and we haven't succeeded in taking initiative from the sides, from the hands of Mr. Putin. Sorry, but you probably have to admit my conclusion. Let me give you, and also this is the biggest probably challenge, because at the same time, not the experts, we have the luxury to wait and see, but for the practitioners, they have two major tests or two major challenges to deal with this in the same time. On the one hand, they have to make rapid, effective and timely actions. On the other hand, they have to balance and to reconsider the possibility and consequences of these actions, whether they are productive or counterproductive. And let me just briefly remind you some of the key facts and figures about the current Ukrainian crisis in the East, which I think important to know as small bits of information that will help us to understand the full picture. First of all, if we think about the development of the events in the eastern part of Ukraine, first of all we have to remember that according to the evidences that we have in our hands now, that the preparation for this crisis has started, according to some estimates, up to 10 years ago, because the local separatist or terrorist cells been created long time ago. Russian FSB and general staff agents were brought to Ukrainian territory long before the 1st of March, the day of so-called Russian Spring. In the whole period, I would say probably from November last year, was used by the Russian side for building up, escalation, and finally ignition, and again escalation of the Ukrainian crisis. And also you saw these evidences not only in eastern Ukraine, but also there is a clear Russian involvement in other cases like on Maidan, in Odessa, Mariupol, and there are plenty of evidences of Russian passport holders and people recognized by their faces in social networks. So there was a very well planned and long time planned and executed operation. What was going on the Ukrainian side after President Yanukovych led the country? First period was, I would say, simple observation, because now we understand why the Ukrainian government was so passive, and there was a lot of criticism towards acting President Turchinov and the ministers. But actually, some of us you may be surprised, but as former head of presidential administration, Mr. Pashinsky, no matter what you think about him as a personality, but I think he has done his great part of job. And he said that at the beginning or the end of February last year, actually Ukrainian government didn't have army, there was no police, and there was no security service in the best case, because some of the security service officers work and still work in favor of the Russian Federation. So if you consider this very low starting point, that we would say that the Ukrainian government has made an amazing job in order to get the situation under control. Also, according to some of the sources that I can disclose, that at probably the mid-April, all the resources that the Ukrainian government had at their disposal were up to 200 special forces people from different services, from reserve, that actually, can you imagine this 45 million country had only up to 200 people that the government had at his disposal to fight against the whole Russian machine, well organized, well equipped, well trained, and with the combat experience. So now, when we ask the question why there was no reaction, I think it will be easier to understand. So during this, let's say, 3 months, the Ukrainian government, with some successes, managed to mobilize up to, according to some estimates, up to 60,000 government forces in the eastern part of Ukraine, in order to block the region, in order to do some, let's say, counter-terrorist small operations inside the cities, and in order to block the border, and from, let's say, to some extent not to let the reinforcement on the Russian side, and not let this spread the separatists to the other areas of Ukraine. There are also at least a couple of days that's really important. For instance, the 2nd of May, when the Odessa accident happened, there was also a clear provocation from outside, and the Odessa event became kind of, I mean, before Odessa, there was real trend to de-escalation of the situation, but after Odessa, it was like a boost in mobilizing factor, which mobilized separatists internally, and which mobilized hundreds of so-called volunteers from Russia. So there was another bad day in the history of this crisis. And also we should keep in mind the presidential elections, and I think that one of the biggest successes of the interim government, that these elections took place despite the results of this election and the performance of the newly elected President Poroshenko brings probably more questions than we expected, but still Ukrainian interim government managed to bring, I would say, fully recognized and legitimate president in power in Ukraine. After his election and inauguration, there was another cause of, let's say, inaction, because quite understandable that despite he was always in the process, it took probably some time for him to understand, but up until now, I should admit that probably he doesn't meet his expectations regarding the way he deals with the current crisis. So, up to now, and we also had this about 10 days of ceasefire. Today is the 3rd day of activation, another phase of activation of the operation, and we have 200 government troops killed, more than 600 injured, more than, I mean, it's just rough estimate, more than 300 civilians killed, and according to some latest data, more than 35,000 internally displaced persons. This is the picture that we have for the moment. very briefly about the threats. The main threats is still the Russian active and counterproductive involvement in the Ukrainian affairs. If Ukraine actually is not powerful enough to stop Russia, and this is something that we have admitted and that we appreciate. That we're still asking our international partners to help Ukraine with this issue dealing with Russia, how to stop Russia from doing what she is doing. Second threat is the local population. Excuse me. There is still a big battle for the hearts and minds of the local population, because the picture on the ground, it's easy to call them separatists, terrorists and so on, but the picture on the ground in reality is more complicated. And unless we get an overwhelming support for the Ukrainian government on the ground, it would be hard to talk about any long-time success. The third among other priorities or among other main threats is the time. And time, as always, works as for favor of Ukrainian side and against the Ukrainian side. Because at the same time we have more and more casualties, and it's like our time became more limited because Ukrainian government still enjoys international support, internal support for the actions, but it will not last forever. So the time is limited. At the same time, it's not very. We are not very pleased with this, but also time works against the Russian Federation, despite its ups and downs. But still, we believe that the longer Russian Federation behaves in this way, the higher cost will be. About future risks, the first risk is, I think, the possibility of spreading instability to other regions of Ukraine and to other neighboring regions like Moldova and to some extent to the Baltic states, Georgia, because then international focus will be divided and the possibility of resolving Ukrainian conflict will be even lower than now. Second, again, Russian involvement. And economic issues, because now Ukraine pays higher and higher price every day for operation, the logistics and so on, but at the same time, they already said 35,000 only officially not registered, but let's say recognized internally displaced person. They need housing, they need some kind of state assistance. And of course, with the current state of economy, it will be harder and harder to provide. Also, about the future is Ukraine badly needs security sector reform, and there are two tasks to do at the same time, which are hard to combine with the same leaders, because one time we have war, and on the other hand, and they are too concentrated on the current crisis that simply, according to my own experience from the meetings with our officials, they are too concentrated on the current issue, and they simply, for good reasons or for bad reasons, they simply can't think about the development or future development of the armed forces. They are too concentrated on the current issue. This probably this part of the job is that the experts can be very helpful. Security solution for this current conflict, I can't invent anything new, but it is the only way. It's for stability, security, and prosperity, which I mean sustainable development. Unless Ukrainian government, with the help assistance of international partners, can provide these three key points, it would be again hard to talk about any success in the nearest future. Again, let me repeat that this conflict will not be resolved as some presidential advisors probably wrongly advised the president in a few days or weeks. It's the problems for the years to come, and now I will come to the what we started with, to the importance of our cooperation with other countries, especially with Turkey, because as one of the famous Ukrainian saying says, that all the unhappy families are alike, and all the unhappy all the unhappy families are alike, and all the happy families are alike, and happy families are unhappy in their own. So we have probably a lot of differences in our common problems with dealing with insurgency and security. So in addition to the areas of cooperation that you mentioned already during this table, trade, political, cultural cooperation, how we have another important area of cooperation. I think that we also have to intensively to share our successes in order to help each other to deal with the security issues. Thank you very much, and I'll be happy to answer questions.